All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. I'm Nick, and this is our daily Cowboys show. Cowboys back in preseason action today. A lot of things to look forward to. There are a lot of news to break down, a lot of things to discuss as we get ready to see game two of the preseason with some of these Dallas Cowboys, these young Cowboys trying to move their way up their depth chart, move their way onto the active roster. But as we always do on this channel, let's get things started with a little stat of the day, chart of the day, a little palate cleanser, as I like to say. And this is courtesy of Cowboys Muse, the X account. You should follow it. It's kind of entertaining. Got a lot of great data and images there. And it's just going to highlight here the NFC East quarterbacks with the most passing yards per game since 2020. Dak Prescott, 270, first place. There's a big gap. Sam Howell, 228 and 209 with Jane Daniels. And then a huge gap with who falls into 11th place with 190 passing yards per game, Jalen Hurts. And now 2020, to be fair, is also the season that Jalen Hurts made his debut. He started playing a lot more at the end of that season, so Hurts has been playing football that entire time. And this isn't to be an indictment of Jalen Hurts, but this is another point that we've been making on this channel a long time, that Dak Prescott, just for whatever reason, just gets crapped on in the media like he's a Sam Darnold level quarterback when he's actually much closer to the top tiers. We talked about it yesterday. The Athletic had him very solidly in the tier 2 realm of quarterbacks, very close to Jalen Hurts, whereas, hey, listen, if he has a good infrastructure around him, he can win a championship. Jalen Hurts had a phenomenal infrastructure around him last year, won a championship, had a phenomenal infrastructure around him a few years ago, went to the Super Bowl, lost against the Kansas City Chiefs. Dak Prescott has never had that phenomenal infrastructure. He's been close. I would argue maybe his rookie year, you could say 2022 is another season where that would be a fair criticism, but he hasn't had, both of those seasons were not nearly as good, in my opinion, as Philly was in terms of complete roster we've seen over the past 2 years for the Eagles. So again, the indictment of Dak Prescott versus Jalen Hurts, there's some people that think Jalen Hurts is a top 4 quarterback. They're wrong, right? Dak Prescott, on a statistical basis, whichever metric you want to look at, is far better than any other quarterback in the NFC East right now. Now, I'm very high on Jay Daniels. He had one great rookie year. Let's see it over time, right? 1 year does not put you in the Hall of Fame, as Bill Parcells famously would joke about. We can stop measuring him for a gold jacket. But when you look at this data, we'll go to, because it's a preseason game coming up, let's go into our second stat of the day here. I think it's very interesting. This is courtesy of PFF. This is the quarterbacks versus the blitz, the highest grade quarterback since 2022. Number 1, Josh Allen, 91.5, outstanding. Number 2, Joe Burrow, 91.3. Number 4, Lamar Jackson, 89.0. A lot of MVP guys on that list. And there's Dak Prescott, right in the middle of Burrow and Jackson, 89.6. Look, this is one of those things when we brought up a chart about a week ago showing a very similar situation where Dak Prescott consistently finds himself in a lead company in a lot of different metrics. This is analytics. We can look at volume stats. We can look at per game stats. I'm not saying Dak Prescott is as good as Allen, Burrow, or Jackson. My opinion is he isn't. He's in a tier below him. But there's a lot of people in the media and just in general fan bases that say, oh, Dak Prescott, middle of the road guy, mediocre guy. Not the case. With the right infrastructure, with the right strategy, he can take you to a championship. It's now on the Cowboys to deliver that right strategy and infrastructure. Look, with the investments on the offensive line, adding Pickens into the fold, the growth and explosion of CeeDee Lamb, the re-signing of Ferguson, I think they're trending in the right direction to execute on that plan. All right, let's get into the news. This first report is from the Dallas Morning News, and the Dallas Morning News, I think it was Calvin Watkins, broke down a couple guys that stock is rising, and I wanted to highlight a few of them just to kind of rehash a few things we've been talking about as we get ready for the preseason game. In today's NFL world, the base defense for most teams is nickel, meaning a defense that includes 5 players in the secondary rather than a standard front 7. It's because of the increasing in passing league wide and the use of 3 receiver sets. It's made having a good nickel corner essential. That was example Jordan Lewis's role for many years in Dallas. And Matt Eberflus's defense, that's no exception. He wants to be physical, communicate, good in coverage. Every defensive coordinator wants that for everybody. So far, the best at doing that might be undrafted Kentucky rookie Zion Childress. Childress has quickly climbed from the depths of the depth chart to working with the starters. He earned the majority of starting nickel snaps in the final 2 practices in California. Childress is battling with former undrafted free agent Keeman Hall to see if one of them could start the nickel, allowing Deron Bland to play outside. Would the Cowboys actually start an undrafted free agent at nickel corner on opening night against the Philadelphia Eagles? It's trending that way. Yeah, we want to see him play. We want to see how he looks against, of course, the Baltimore Ravens and in the final preseason game and in the final practices. But at this point, I kind of want to see why not, right? Because what do? Do you roll out Keeman Hall out there and just say, you kind of know who he is. You know he's obviously not a starter caliber player, at least hasn't been yet in his NFL career. If you're Schottenheimer and you want to set like a new culture, new attitude, what better way to send a message to your team that you're all about meritocracy and just earning it with what you do in practice and in preseason games than getting an undrafted rookie that many people, myself included, was just a camp body. Get him actual starting reps against the defending Super Bowl champions on national TV. I tell you what, you talk about sending a message that the old Cowboys of, hey, listen, if you're one of Jerry's guys, or if you've been here a while, you're gonna get a lot of playing time. You want to send a message that that era is over and it's all about meritocracy. I think you start Zion Childress. I think it's gonna happen. I think that's my prediction. Almost as long as he doesn't get hurt or really play poorly down the stretch, I think he will be the starter at nickel. I don't know if he'll play every single snap at nickel, but I think he will be the starter week 1 against Philly. If nothing else, to send a message that you could earn playing time and earn becoming a starter. Schottenheimer and his staff's been all about it this camp. I think it's the right message to take. I think he becomes a starter. The report also highlighted Phil Maffa. This is from the Dallas Morning News. Schottenheimer indicated earlier in training camp that both of his rookie running backs, Jaden Blue and Maffa, didn't pick up things during minicamp and OTAs as fast as he might have hoped. It was evident that Jaden Blue hit the ground running in Oxford. Maffa might have done it a little more under the radar, but it's now evident he did too. He had 10 carries for 36 yards in his first preseason game, though his longest carry was taken off the board because of a penalty. The numbers don't jump off the page, but the way Maffa ran told a different story. Schottenheimer said earlier in camp that he was starting to feel Maffa's running style. Saturday and the last few practices in Oxnard showed that too. He's another one of those guys that when the pads come on, you see something. Cowboys offensive coordinator Clayton Adams said he's certainly got some instincts and plays fast. He's got a little bit of a slasher style. I thought he did a lot of good things. Maffa has also had increased opportunities recently, while Blue has dealt with an ankle injury and veteran Miles Sanders missed time with a knee injury. Sanders is expected back Saturday. Blue didn't practice this week, so his status is up in the air. It should be another chance for Maffa to raise his stock. He's the guy I want to watch, to be totally honest, because I think for me, if you're Dallas, what you do at running back, I don't want to say early in the season, but by the middle of the season, is going to tell you what kind of team Dallas is going to be, I think, in the future, right? Do they have the horses to be the future of the running back room on the roster right now? Now, I think we all think Jaden Blue is going to be a big part of that. I don't think no one seriously says Miles Sanders is going to be a long-term answer. I think no one believes Deuce Vaughn's going to be a long-term answer, right? Maybe short-terming with a guy like Sanders. Javonte Williams, we'll see what he has left in the tank. Big question marks there. I think he's their starting running back week 1 as they get some of these young guys up to speed. But the question is, do they have that thunder and lightning with Blue and Moffitt? Is that the future of the Cowboys running back room? Do they have their Zeke and Pollard in 2021, 2022, right? I think that's what the Cowboys were hoping to have, Pollard take over the lead role in 2023. That didn't work out in 2024. It was just a debacle. Can they replicate that? Can they replicate the Julius Jones, Marion Barber, 2007 stuff? We'll have to see. But if Moffitt can continue to improve, definitely got to watch. There's some evidence heading in that direction. I think that would be an exciting thing for the Cowboys. Again, having 2 talented, cheap running backs. And it's not unheard of, right? The Kansas City Chiefs, 7th-round running back, Isaiah Pacheco, doing good things. So we're not talking about unprecedented territory here. Want to see more from Moffitt. And again, he doesn't have to be a superstar. Just be a quality running back, short yardage, goal line, physical guy. Complement Jaden Blue and his running style. It's very possible. All right, next story here. This is kind of a really good news. This is courtesy of Brandon Lohr. Cowboys DeMarvion Overshown gives us an update on his recovery/rehab. To be honest, it couldn't be any better. He keeps making progress, and it's courtesy of video with Greg Rosenthal, the reporter at NFL Daily. Yeah, so Overshown getting better and getting through rehab is so critically important. Obviously, finishing strong in 2025, having him into the fold would be absolutely massive. But again, I've said this a lot on this channel, and I'm going to keep saying it. This team is actually structured to win 2026 or 2027. It feels like the 2012, 2013 Dallas Cowboys. It feels like the 2006 Dallas Cowboys, where it's just sort of building to a year or two in the future, right? New coach, new culture, a lot of young players. Overshown returning from injury and using this season to kind of, again, get his feet underneath him again, return to form, and then go just 100% next year. You talk about an all-pro superstar bursting out in the league. We saw that when he played last year for the defense at times, certainly before the injury against Cincinnati. I think him getting healthier and healthier is a great sign. And let's give some credit to the Cowboys rehab up to this point. Guyton evidently has been doing a great job in rehab. Overshown doing a great job. Some of these guys are really putting in the work and really accelerating their timelines and being ready to return at least on schedule, if not earlier. Great job by them putting the work in. All right, next article here. Or post, I should say. This is courtesy of John Machota. Cooper Rush says there are no hard feelings with the way things ended in Dallas, not getting his extra incentive bonus. People forget he could have been paid more money, but they decided to not start him, file against Washington, and go with Trey Lance. No, I mean, it's business. I had a great time there. Awesome 8 years. I'm really close with a lot of people in that organization. One of the things that's so interesting is that if you listen to people in the media, when people leave Dallas, they hate Dallas, right? Because like, oh, you got the famous tours thing. You guys remember that ESPN article last year where there was like, oh, the tours are a distraction around the facility or whatever, and that all this media publicity and all Jerry Jones likes to do and all that kind of stuff, such a distraction, and the players hate it. And what they always do is they always find an example of one or two players that leaves and is unhappy because they didn't get paid a lot of money, and they use that as an example. But what's interesting about all those players, I'm going to use Dalton Schultz, the former Cowboys tight end, as an example. He left Dallas and was very critical of the Cowboys and how they operate. He said he went to Houston, and he's like, oh, I'm so glad I'm in a place where they make football the main thing. Make the main thing the main thing. You talk to the Texans fan base, they are so disappointed in Dalton Schultz because he is nowhere near as good as he was in Dallas and Houston. Now they're concerned about injuries, his availability. They're questioning his work ethic. If you look at the fan base when it comes to Dalton Schultz with the Houston Texans, they are not happy with him at all. They've got two young tight ends down in Houston, Stover and Jordan, that they like a lot more than Dalton Schultz. There's a lot of disappointment. They felt Schultz really let them down, specifically last year for the stretch run. And there are other examples like this as well. Some guys leave the Cowboys, they're a little disgruntled, a little disappointed, and then they just make headlines like, oh, look at this. The Cowboys are not a good organization. Listen, there's always employees that leave a company that are disappointed, disgruntled. They get to a new place and say, oh, this is great, this is great. But when you give it time, you realize maybe the problem was the employee. Look at Schultz in Houston. The Houston Texans, not a huge fan of them right now. Again, he was talking crap about Dallas. He'll probably leave Houston soon and talk crap about them. People that are disgruntled employees always tend to be disgruntled employees wherever they end up going. Cooper Rush, again, he left Dallas twice. Came back, right? He left for be a backup in New York, came back to be a backup in Dallas. Nothing but great feelings. He loves Dallas. He loves the Cowboys organization. He's been very clear about that the entire time. Most former Cowboys love Dallas. One of the things that's so interesting about Jerry Jones when you talk to his negotiations and all of the noise with Micah Parsons and all that, but most former players to a man love him to death. They may criticize his management style, they may criticize his ownership style, but in terms of how he makes them feel and what he does for the organization and what he does for them personally, they love him. And it's one of those things that people need to separate. Jerry Jones, the manager, Jerry Jones, the businessman, versus Jerry Jones, the owner, the leader of the Dallas Cowboys organization as a whole. They love the leader, they love the owner, they love the man. The businessman, a little tougher to deal with. But let's be totally honest. When the business gets into it, it becomes a tougher kind of thing. It is a business, to use Cooper Rush's words there, of course. Now, it does speak to the argument, should Jerry Jones give up the business side and focus on just being the owner side? I think that's a very fair criticism to make, but there is this sort of motif going around in the media right now that, oh, the Cowboys organization, people hate playing there. Not true. Everyone loves going to Dallas. You get a lot of notoriety. You get a lot of FaceTime. You leave the Cowboys. You get overpaid, like Schultz, Armstrong, following Dan Quinn to Washington, for example. You get there, and suddenly your production drops. Suddenly it was a lot harder to play football than you realized. And without, the number one team on CBS and Fox Sports talking about how great you are because you're playing with the Cowboys, suddenly those fan bases realize maybe you aren't so great. I think this is an example right here. Cooper Rush's comments speaks to how good the Cowboys organization, in terms of their relationship with players, really is. Again, put aside the business and the tough negotiations for a second. What they do in Dallas, players, for the most part, we're talking 90+%, love playing there, love the Jones family, love the organization. All right, moving on. Next article here. This is courtesy of Mike Garofalo, to that same kind of point, talking about Dallas's rival Washington. Offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, asked about wide receiver Terry McLaurin a few times, says on-field work needs to happen soon. I think we're kind of at that point where we need to start getting those reps when they're available out there and just gelling to see where we are as an offense. So Terry McLaurin, again, holding out. He's demanded a bigger raise. He's very similar to the Micah Parsons situation. He's not practicing, right? And this is one of the things that's so important. It goes back to my point before about Dallas being in the news. People say Jerry Jones just wants the news. He just wants the attention. Part of it is Jerry Jones, and part of it is, everything he does, and that's very fair. But when you're the most valuable franchise in the world, when you're the number one media commodity in the world, people will gravitate the news to you, even when there are other teams, other franchises in the middle of the exact same thing. Can you imagine if Matt Eberflus came out over the past couple days and said, Micah Parsons needs to start practicing? That would be like the number one story on every ESPN show, every one of the shouty shows on Fox Sports. It would be a front page headline in every sports section, right? Instead, you have an all-pro team captain, Terry McLaurin, Washington Commanders, the good vibes Washington. That's all I hear. The vibes are so good in Washington. I know they gave up 55. I know they got embarrassed in the NFC Championship game, but the vibes guys are so good. Everyone loves everyone. It's awesome. Good ownership group. They're doing amazing. Great leadership. Their team captain, face of the franchise for a decade while they struggled, doesn't want to practice, and it's hurting them, according to their own coaching staff. Crickets. Nothing. Nothing in the media. It's a little side story. Put it off to the side. And Washington's a big market franchise. Washington, D.C., for God's sakes, right? They're one of the top 10 most valuable franchises in the NFL. It just speaks to the power of Dallas. And this is where I think Jerry Jones sort of created this massive monster by making the Dallas Cowboys so valuable and so marketable. It draws all eyeballs to them every single time. It makes them this crazy flywheel effect, which makes them more valuable and more marketable, which draws more eyeballs, which makes them more valuable and more marketable, which, on and on and on and on. But the reality is, Washington's situation with their team captain, Terry McLaurin, right? McLaurin's not practicing. Offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, not happy about it. Team's not happy about it. They're saying it's going to hurt us. The vibes are supposed to be so good in Washington. Not good vibes here at all. No talking points in the media. Nothing coming out. I'm not blaming the media. You have to go where the ratings are, right? I understand completely. I get that business. We all do. But the reality is, for people that are hypercritical and just, what is wrong with Washington? Why won't they do this or that? Or what is wrong with Dallas? Why won't they do this or that? Listen, we see them in Washington. We see it with Steelers with their captain, their leader, Cam Hayward, right? We see this the Bengals with their long-term defensive captain, their best player on their defense by far the past couple seasons in Hendrickson. Look, these things happen, right? It's part of the game. It's part of the business. It's not just Dallas. So ignore the social media talking heads. Ignore the Fox Sports, big traditional media talking heads, because they're just going to where the eyeballs to get the ratings, talking about the Cowboys, even when worse things, in my opinion, are going on with teams like Washington, where the vibes, again, are supposedly so good. Not the case. All right, let's get into the comment section. And while I'm working through the comments, put down in the comment section of this video what you want to see from this preseason game, guys. I think we can rehash after the fact Sunday and Monday. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things going on and a lot of things to talk about there. I personally think there's a lot we need to see, but let's get through the comments from yesterday's video in just a second. This first is from Plague Doctor, a great commenter, a regular commenter. Thank you very much. I like the breakdown. This is the first show where I tend to agree with nearly everything being said. Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel the fan base takes CD for granted. I have had other fans tell me Cooper was better, talking about Amari Cooper, because he had a higher yards per catch. I'm like, no way on that. And CD is probably our only true clutch performer who doesn't shrink against elite teams. Our two best players are Micah and CD, and I constantly see our fans badmouth them. Yeah, I think CeeDee Lamb is so weird to me. I mean, he's very, very good. He's an all-pro superstar, top 2, top 3 in his position easily. He gets a lot of publicity for it, but I don't think people understand how good he really is. He's better than Dez Bryant. He's better than Amari Cooper. Now, part of that's my opinion, but I think you can watch him play. Dez Bryant had those crazy one-on-one matchups, those red zones, and those physical plays. And he was just awesome. He had a 3-year stretch there where he was unstoppable in those kind of situations. Like, I think he led the NFL in receiving touchdowns in aggregate over a 3-year period. He was a very good Pro Bowl player, awesome player, right? Amari Cooper, awesome player. But the reality is CeeDee Lamb, in terms of everything he does, toughness, battling through injuries, leadership we saw last season, he's elevated himself to a whole nother tier. I agree here 100%. Tori Lee 9476 commented, I like the content, but he better start learning who we go to for Dallas Cowboys content. You don't know Okoye, you don't know Vouch Lombardi, do better, but Betty knows Broadus, LOL, shut your butt up. I'll stay away from the profanity there. Don't want to get dinged by YouTube. He'll never get it. You need to get out more, and remember, you're listening to nothing but the best. If you talk about a few comments like this, look, I'm going to be totally honest, guys. I'm a big reader when it comes to content. I like reading. I like sports writers. That's just how I grew up, right? This is the old Sports Illustrated, the old, books where you have the sports writers, ghost writers for these NFL players, coaches, executives. That's, to me, how I always like, looking at news and stories like that. There's nothing obviously wrong with YouTube, because you're all watching YouTube, and I do watch some YouTube but I'm just not deep into the weeds. I mean, I know some of these guys are very big, I'm sure, and very successful, and they're probably very, very smart and extremely talented in a lot of what they do on YouTube, and I'm sure you guys like them, so they must be very good and very smart. I'm just saying, not really my thing. I'm more of a reader when it comes to that kind of thing, but that's just me personally, right? So, hey, I apologize if I don't know who Lombardi or Okoye is personally. I mean, I hear them referenced all the time, and I'm sure they're phenomenal. So, again, nothing against them. I'm sure they're great. Probably better than me, to be totally honest. But, again, that's just not my speed. I'm more of a reader when it comes to news. Anyway, Mighty Pepino 76 posted, don't sleep on Phil Maffa. He has breakaway ability, did it plenty at Clemson. I hope he gets a workload in the next, I think you meant to say preseason game. I think he'll be our best running back. The breakaway, it's one of those things where it could, I agree with you. I did see at Clemson, right? I'm actually live in South Carolina, so I saw a lot of him play at Clemson in terms of being on TV, broadcast TV and stuff like that. But the question was, will that breakaway speed translate? And we haven't seen that yet, whether in training camp or in preseason. That's the one question mark. Everyone knows he's a good downhill physical runner, that slasher, like Adam said. Can he break away? I think if we start seeing that more in practice and see that in the preseason, that's a great sign for Phil Maffa. I would agree 100% there. Let's see here. Red Dawn California posted the best rookie of the bunch, not Tyler Bucker. He's been so solid, it's boring. Great point. Hey, you're a good first round pick. Reminds me a little bit of Terrence Newman in 2003, right? It was sort of out of Kansas State, I believe, top 10 pick at the time. It was very, very boring, right? People wasn't super flashy, didn't get everyone excited, didn't draw the headlines. And he was a good corner his rookie year. I remember when he picked off Patrick Ramsey in the later part of the season at Washington, 3 times? Was a good player throughout his entire career. Not spectacular, not an all-pro, not a Hall of Famer, but a really good player. Again, when you're good and steady and boring, that's not a bad thing for a first-round pick. Great point there. Great comment. This is from Arlie G 1761. I think talking about Mozzie Smith in the run defense. He commented, no. If you want to be honest, you need to count the runs up the middle. Our run defense is absolutely horrible on the edges. Take those runs out of the game, and you see Mozzie is doing his job. Well, that's not how it works, right? I mean, look, I know I get what you're saying. It's like, well, a run on the edges, like those outside zone run concepts. You have to understand a lot of what happens there on those edges is that the defensive end or whoever's got outside contained sets the edge. Dallas Cowboys are actually okay at that last year. Not great, they're okay. But their linebacker and defensive tackle play was so bad is that the running backs could then cut back and keep it wide and just hit those off tackle runs. And it looked like, for example, it was an outside run, an alpha tackle run, and says, oh, the edges are the problem. And the edges weren't great. I'm not saying they were superstars, but they were actually adequate last year. The problem is when you get blown off on the backside of double teams or you get cut off so easily that people like the backside linebackers get cut off by offensive linemen, so the pursuit doesn't get there. So you see an edge defender do an okay job, all right, and the running back hits the hole. Instead of having a backside linebacker or backside defensive tackle get there and make the play, they don't, right? Running back gets through for a huge hole like we saw all last year for Dallas. Now, who's responsible for cutting off the backside cutoffs, the scoops on the backside of the offensive line? That would be like the one technique, like Mozzie Smith. Who's responsible for protecting the linebackers? That would be a one technique like Mozzie Smith. He was terrible at that, god-awful. There were a lot of examples of the Detroit Lions literally running off tackle where Mozzie Smith would get blown off the football, he would get cut off, and then one of the guys in the Lions, usually it would be the center and backside guard would blow him off the football, get him cut off, center would give some help, and then get up on the backside linebacker, and there'd be no one in pursuit, and it would just be a huge hole, huge gaping hole. A lot of what defense is, especially in today's NFL with those zone concepts, is backside pursuit, constricting the holes. When you have a guy like Mozzie Smith who gets routinely blown off the football and allows offensive linemen to get up to the second level, that backside pursuit doesn't get there. It results in huge runs. So I get your point where visually you say, well, the edges don't look great. A lot of that is because the edges aren't perfect. I'm not saying they were really great last year. They weren't. But they were good enough to be okay. The problem was Mozzie Smith and the interior defensive line was so bad. And linebacker play, too, was inconsistent for a little while there, too. I'm not going to give everyone a free pass here. There was a lot of problems last year. But when you don't have defensive linemen taking up space, eating up double teams on the backside that allow linebackers to flow over the top, what happens is your edge play is adequate. So instead of giving up maybe a 5-yard run, there's no backside linebacker in pursuit. You give up a 20-yard run. And that's where it falls on defensive tackles inside like Smith. At 2 Denise 2 posted, appreciate the data on Mozzie. It's hard to assess him when so much of the criticism is skewed by his draft selection. This data was very telling and lines up with my fans' eye view. Yeah, so this is an important thing about data that I mention all the time. I think it's really important, is that data shouldn't be your leading indicator if somebody or some team is good or bad. Data is sort of just, it's sort of like an experiment. It's a scientific method, right? if anyone remembers from school, scientific method, you make an observation, you create a hypothesis on that observation, and then you test it, right? So let's use that scientific method for Mozzie Smith. We observe him, we observe the run defense. He doesn't look good. The run defense doesn't look good. Okay, so we have a hypothesis. Maybe Mozzie Smith isn't good. Maybe he's not a good football player. Then we test it. We look at the data, and it confirms our hypothesis, right? Now, we have to do more testing. That's part of the scientific method, and we have to do more evaluation, but that's how it works. Our eye test, we look at Mozzie Smith, we look at the run defense as a whole, defensive tackle play as a whole, we say, not good, right? And we look at other observations from, other fans, other coaches, other reports, and say, hey, he's not doing so good. We put all those observations together, scientific method, create a hypothesis, we test it with data, and we realize, oh, it turns out our observations were correct. He isn't that good. Now, if we had our observations, run the test, and the data showed he was actually pretty solid, then we would have to retool. We'd have to go back to the beginning of the scientific method. That's how it works, guys. That's how the scientific method is applied. That's what we should use to apply to evaluate players and teams. We use the eye test. We use what we see, what the reporting is when it comes to certain players, schemes, and strategies. And then once we have that sort of feeling of it, then we start going to test, looking at the data. For example, one of the reasons I like, QBR, quarterback rating, is that every single season, for going back like 10, 15 years, the quarterbacks at the top of the list, if you go back like 15 years ago, the first three guys would always be Brady, Rodgers, and Breeze. And I'd be like, okay, this is probably a good stat because the top three quarterbacks in the NFL by eye test are those three guys. And if those three guys are at the top of the list statistically, it's probably a halfway decent stat, right? Again, scientific method, observation. Those three quarterbacks are good. We test it with data. Hey, the data says those three quarterbacks are good. It's probably a good test, right? That's what we're seeing here. Again, use an intelligent method. Don't cherry pick plays. Don't cherry pick narratives. Mozzie Smith had some good games. The New York Giants last year in New York, phenomenal game, awesome game. Talked about it last year. But it's more than just one game. It's more than just cherry picking a few plays, right? And I'm not saying Mozzie Smith isn't the best one technique on this team. He might be the best one technique on this team right now. He's just not a good football player right now. Again, I've said this 500 times. I am not rooting against him. I hope he gets better. I'm rooting for him. But right now, following a scientific, logical approach, he just isn't very good. That's just a fact, guys. Just a fact. Stephen Vanover, regular commenter. I really appreciate that. Commented, what Grandpa says at Mozzie Smith, that dog ain't gonna hunt. Time to move on. I agree. Vanover also commented later, Micah trade for Khalil Mack is the deal to look at if you are gauging Micah trade floor. So 2 firsts, third, fifth for Mack, a second and conditional fifth. So we're looking at a couple of ones and probably a couple twos with lower round picks going back and forth to goose egos. That would be the floor for any trade. Herschel Walker would be the ceiling, of course. Yeah, that's a lot to give up. And that's one of the things people talk about is there's very few GMs that are willing to do that and then because they're going to have to make the trade and then pay Micah Parsons top of the market value. So basically what you would do if you acquired Micah Parsons, you would be locking yourself into a massive cap hit for the next 5 years, and you'd be trading away your right to get a lot of cheap young players. That's why it's so hard to pick up a trade like this, because if you're a team, like, okay, we're going to bring in Micah Parsons, and we're going to use all of our free cap space to get him locked in for the long term, and we're also going to get rid of most of our good assets to get cheap young players. There's very few GMs that feel comfortable doing that, because you basically would be boom or bust, right? You either love your team right now and hope you don't get any injuries at all and hope everyone lives up to their potential. Otherwise, you're going to be a 4-win, 5-win team. You're going to be, the Raiders. You're going to be the Browns. You're going to really struggle, even though you have a great defensive end and Crosby and Garrett with those two franchises. I think that's one of the reasons why. Again, the Cowboys hold all the cards. I don't think a trade's going to happen, but I agree with you. That's the most likely situation. The Khalil Mack to Herschel Walker range makes sense to me. This is from Blues Plender Leith 838. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm a BC Boston College fan. Ezzy does not quit. All those extra possessions we gave teams before James, Ezzy kept us in it every game. It's always good to hear. I always love when college fans, comment on NFL prospects, rookies, because they have some really interesting insights. Thank you for that. Great comment. Carmick Patina commented, you are wrong on Will McClay. Name all the straight dogs he has brought to the club. I don't think I can name one. CeeDee Lamb. Football is not Tyler Smith. Football is not about the draft picks. Build out the middle-class dogs of the team and sprinkle in the star players at the crux positions. Always churning the bottom of the roster. Every team churns the bottom of the roster. Will McClain has done zero in this regard. The team is top-heavy and burdened. We have no middle class or representation of the idiots running it, including Todd Williams and especially Will McClay. #overrated. I disagree. Look, there's no team in the NFL that doesn't have churn at the bottom of the roster. That's how their salary cap is structured. So every team, good and bad, has a lot of churn at the bottom of the roster. Very few teams have a very good middle class of the roster, right? You look at, for example, the Kansas City Chiefs. They were incredibly top heavy, right? They basically had to rely on a rookie first rounder, Xavier Worthy, last year to basically be their number one receiver down the stretch, right? Can you imagine if any other championship team or Super Bowl team that was relying on that, just, hey, we're going to throw a rookie in there and hope he does good, right? I mean, it just wouldn't work, right? This would be a dumb strategy, but that's just how it works. Their main running back's a seventh round pick, right? They are so top heavy on that roster, the Kansas City Chiefs are, but it works, right? Because they're good enough at the good players and they've got good strategies and good coaches, and they do well in the first round generally. You have to do well in the first 2 rounds. I think Will McClay, generally speaking, hasn't been perfect, but there's been a lot of dogs he's brought on this team, to use your where there are a lot of really good football players in those mid to late rounds, right? It's just one of those things. It becomes a narrative. I personally don't like it. I mean, but the reality is, look, Overshown was a 3rd round pick, right? Pretty darn good football player. I'd say he's a dog. Was Ferguson the 1st round pick? I think he's a dog. He's a tough guy, right? Tony Pollard was not a 1st round pick. He was a really good player when he played for Dallas. I mean, we can go on and on and on down the list here. I mean, even Jalen Tolbert, while he's not a superstar, is a quality role player receiver, good blocker, led the team in touchdowns last season. Again, not like a superstar, but for a middle round pick, is getting the job done. And we can Deron Bland, right? You can go list can go on and on and on and on. Leah Fowl doing some good things, right? You can go down this list and go back any number of years. The point is, I think we all should agree that Will McClay is one of the smartest people in this front office. It's actually really, I hope he gets the GM title eventually. He basically, when it comes to evaluations of player scouting and drafting, he basically takes on that role. He's a really good player in the organization. Cowboys, keep throwing money at him, keep promoting him. That's my opinion there. All right, this is from Night Train James 247. Very good assessment. Keep putting out valid information. The growth will happen. Thank you very much. Bibliophile 2707 commented, please sign Micah, get her done. Yeah, I think we all hope it will happen, but it's all about the right money, of course, and hopefully they can meet there and get that done. Javon Jones 95 commented, the Winston disrespect is hilarious, talking about how he said Mozzie Smith is basically Jameis Winston. I didn't mean to disrespect Jameis Winston that much. I think he's a good backup. He can win you a game in a pinch. He proved that last year for Cleveland. But I just think it's like was mentioned in one of the earlier comments, is that a first-round pick has a notoriety, has a name recognition, but he's just too wildly inconsistent, has too many disaster plays. That's Mozzie Smith, right? So again, when you're thinking of a comp in terms of a more visible position, Mozzie Smith at defensive tackle is basically Jameis Winston at quarterback, not a starter in the National Football League, at least not right now. Blue Hawaii 111 commented, I don't know why they didn't release him last year. I've yet to see a respectable 4-game performance in his 2 years here. I think the Giants is one last year. I think in New York is the biggest one that comes to mind. But I agree with you. Listen, I think he just was so cheap, right? I mean, he does have the potential, and so I think you just give him. I think you give him 3 years. It was a new coaching staff. Hey, let's see how he does year 3. So far, not so good. So we'll have to see how it all shakes out. Wyatt Newman 5168. Posted, I had the pleasure of watching Mozzie destroy the Giants in New York. The solution to playing All-Pro is obviously that I have to be there. Venmo me season tickets. Hey man, if you get Mozzie Smith playing like an All-Pro, I think we'll start a GoFundMe for you, man. So we'll keep an eye on that. Scotty Oliver 8025 commented, if we had Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles owner, as our owner, we would win a championship. Maybe, but ifs. Can't control ifs. Can't control hypotheticals. Dennis Bell-X1RV. I'm a data guy. Thanks for the show. Love it. Keep the data coming. Mo better. Appreciate that. Again, so I played collegiately, so I'm not like an analytics guy only. I was a backup offensive lineman in D1 WFCS. So again, I'm not any sort of star or anything like that. Not even close. But I think you can use sort of playing experience and you can some data and kind of come together. Again, the data is the test of the scientific method. We make an observation, use the data to test, and calibrate our observation and hypothesis based on that. That's how it works, guys. Hopefully the game plan accelerates. It's clear the Rams are ahead of us. Give Shoddy a chance. Don't forget we had 10 years of 8-8 with Garrett. Childress looks good. Great point. I made this point a few times before. The Rams are ahead. They've been and McVay's been, and their GM right there, his name fails me off the top of my head. Sean McVay, and I'm forgetting the name of the GM, Les Snead. There it is. been in that program for a decade now. So their culture, their environment, their strategies, that's been in there for so long. Shawnee's first year there. The Rams and teams like the Rams and Philadelphia too are going to be ahead of them, certainly in the preseason and training camp and probably for the first half of the regular season. Give it time though. Let's see how things work out, especially as the Cowboys get healthier. R. Shake and Bake 114 commented, damn, bro's got paperwork and studies from the Pentagon showing you just how bad Mozzie Smith is. Not quite reports from the Pentagon, but again, the data, again, just a test. It's just looking, hey, he doesn't look good. You look at the data, still doesn't look good, validates the hypothesis, right? Brandon R43 commented, what a weird take. No one trusts PFF, including you, but here's proof from PFF that Mozzie is awful. That's an F take, whether you're right or wrong. I didn't say not to trust PFF. I just said it wasn't the gospel truth, and it can be flawed at times. Again, it's all about validating the hypothesis. You don't look at PFF data exclusively. You don't not watch the games. You don't not watch any footage whatsoever, and then at the end of the game, look at PFF and say, okay, who stinks and who doesn't, right? That's not effective. You can watch the games, watch a lot of games, come up with an observation, create a hypothesis, and then you can look at data like PFF data to either confirm or deny, validate or affirm that, or that validate and / affirm that hypothesis. And what you saw there is that the data from PFF validates the hypothesis. It's a scientific method, guys. It's all it is, right? Ain't rocket science, right? It's led to rocket science, but it ain't rocket science. All right, that's all the comments for today. A lot of great stuff, guys. Keep it coming. A little longer show than I expected, but again, you guys got a lot of great comments, so I love hitting them. But a lot of things to look forward to in the preseason game today. I'm looking at Mafa. I'm looking at Childress. Booker, of course, Ezra Raku, right? Want to see Shamar James. I'm a big Shamar James, guys. But we'll get into it after the game. Exciting things to watch later today. Until next time, though, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection.